Part 1. Mount Vernon, the river, and the candlelight. The night is still over Virginia. A soft wind drifts from the Potomac River, brushing through the old trees that surround Mount Vernon. The air carries the scent of wood smoke, pine, and the faint sweetness of spring grass. Far in the distance, a night bird calls once, and then silence falls again, thick, warm, peaceful. This house, standing tall and white against the hill, has seen centuries pass. It has heard the laughter of servants, the clatter of horse hooves, and the quiet sighs of a man who carried the weight of a nation upon his shoulders. His name was George Washington. Tonight, the house rests. The rooms are dark, except for a single candle burning in the study, its flame steady, flickering softly across papers that no longer matter. The ink on those pages has long since faded, but the stories remain, whispered by the old walls themselves. In the study, the wooden chair still stands by the window. It faces the river, as if waiting for him to return. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the slow, deliberate sound of boots on the floorboards. The first President of the United States, walking through his home, after years of war and leadership. He was not a man of many words. Those who knew him said he was calm, measured, like the steady flow of the river outside. But in the quiet moments, he carried memories heavier than armor. The cold fields of Valley Forge, the cries of soldiers, the hope of a young, fragile country. Now, in his final years, all he wished for was peace. No cheering crowds, no politics, only this place. Mount Vernon, the home he built with his own dreams. At dawn, the river shimmered like glass. Mist rose from the water, wrapping the trees in silver veils. Washington would step out onto the porch, dressed neatly even in the early hours, and watch the light climb slowly over the hills. He loved this routine, the quiet cup of tea, the rustle of leaves, the low murmur of his workers beginning the day. Sometimes he would walk down to the stables, his cane tapping against the stones. Pausing to pat the neck of his favorite horse, Nelson, the one that had carried him through battles and victory. He would speak softly to the animal, as though sharing a secret only old friends could understand. And then, he would look toward the river again, his mind drifting far beyond the horizon, to a future he had helped shape, yet would never fully see. The evenings were the most peaceful. The house glowed with the light of candles and the warmth of the hearth. Guests came from distant states, and the dinner table filled with the sound of gentle laughter and the clinking of glass. But after everyone had gone to bed, Washington would remain awake in his study, reading by the fire. Books on philosophy, farming, science, he loved them all. Sometimes, he wrote letters to friends, his handwriting neat and deliberate. He would write about the weather, the crops, and the simple rhythm of the land that gave him peace. Never once did he boast about his victories. He preferred to speak of nature, the turning of seasons, the patience of the earth, the way time heals everything it touches. On cold nights, when rain lashed against the windows, the house would creak and sigh like an old friend settling into sleep. Martha Washington would sit near the fire, knitting quietly, the soft clicking of needles filling the silence. Outside, the wind howled across the river, but inside, everything was calm. The president would look up from his book and smile faintly. He was a man who had seen storms far greater than this, and yet, he found the most comfort in small things, the warmth of home, the sound of Martha's voice, and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring another quiet morning. Time passed, as it always does. One winter evening, as snow fell over the hills, the great man became ill. The doctors came and went, their footsteps heavy on the stairs. The fire burned low, and Martha sat by his side, holding his hand. Outside, the river flowed on, unchanged, as though nature itself refused to pause for the sorrow of men. When dawn came, the candle in his room flickered once and went out. The house fell silent. The master of Mount Vernon had found his final peace, but even now, centuries later, people say that on quiet nights, when the moonlight touches the white walls of the mansion, you can still feel his presence. Calm, strong, protective, the house stands like a guardian of memory. The floors remember his steps. The garden remembers his hands planting seeds in the earth. And the river it still flows, just as it did when he stood watching it. Thinking about a new nation, a fragile hope, and the meaning of peace. As you listen to this story, imagine you are walking through that house, your fingers brushing over polished wood, your footsteps soft on the old floors. The air smells faintly of wax and time. The rooms hum with quiet energy, the kind that comes from lives well lived. You pass the library, shelves upon shelves of worn books. You hear the faint tick of an old clock. You feel warmth from a fire that never truly went out. And when you step outside, the river greets you wide, endless, shimmering under moonlight. It whispers softly, greater than rest now. The world is still turning, so you close your eyes. The wind from the Potomac brushes your cheek, The sound of history fades into a gentle hum, and slowly, peacefully, you drift into sleep. Good night. Part 2. Adam's apple trees. The morning sun rises gently over Quincy, Massachusetts. Golden light spills across the rooftops, over the dew-soaked fields, and into the windows of a modest brick house that stands among apple trees. This is the home of John Adams, the second President of the United States, a man of fierce mind, deep conviction, and, in his later years, surprising calm. Unlike the grand plantation of Mount Vernon, Adams' home is humble, simple, and quiet. There are no tall columns, no sweeping staircases. Only the sound of birds in the orchard, and the soft laughter of his wife, Abigail, drifting through the morning air. This house was not built to impress the world. It was built to shelter a family, to hold letters, laughter, and the scent of baked bread cooling by the window. The Adams house was a living heart, a place where history and home were one. Inside, the wooden floors shine faintly in the morning light. The walls are lined with shelves of books, Latin, Greek, law, and philosophy. Asterisk, John Adams had spent his youth reading by candlelight. Asterisk, and now, even in his age, he never let a single day pass without learning something new. He was not a man who loved silence, he loved discussion. Debate, the clatter of ideas striking one another like flint. Asterisk, yet in this home, in these later years, silence came as a friend, not an enemy. Asterisk, when he woke each morning, he would look through the small window toward the orchard. Asterisk, the apple trees stood like quiet sentinels. Asterisk, their branches heavy with fruit in autumn, bare, and glistening in winter. He often said, those trees reminded him of his own life, seasons of struggle, seasons of rest, but always rooted deeply in the same earth. Asterisk, Abigail Adams, his beloved wife, moved through the house like a calm melody. Asterisk, she was strong, thoughtful, endlessly wise. Asterisk, when John was away for years serving as a diplomat in France, then as vice president, and later president. Asterisk, it was Abigail who kept this home alive, writing letter after letter that became the bridge between their hearts. Asterisk, even now, her spirit seemed to linger in every room. Asterisk, the desk in the corner still held her inkwell, and if you listened closely, you could almost hear her voice reading aloud a letter greater than my dearest friend. Remember that even in your labors for the nation. Asterisk, the hearth of home still burns for you. Asterisk, those letters were more than words. They were love carved in ink. The heartbeat of a marriage that endured the weight of distance, duty, and time. Asterisk, on warm days, John liked to sit beneath the apple trees. Asterisk, he would bring a small stool, a book, and sometimes a quill. Asterisk, the ground smelled of earth and fallen leaves, and bees hummed lazily among the blossoms. He often thought about the strange journey his life had taken. Asterisk, from a poor farmer's son to a lawyer, then revolutionary, diplomat, and president. Asterisk, he had seen the birth of a nation, and he had also seen how heavy its growing pains could be. Sometimes, he would speak softly to himself, reflecting on the struggles of liberty, on the storms of politics. Asterisk, and on the quiet truth that greatness often comes not from power, but from persistence. He once said to Abigail, Asterisk, greater than I must study politics and war. Asterisk, that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. That dream still lived in him, that one day, peace would allow the next generation to think, create, and dream freely. The afternoons in Quincy were slow, golden, and kind. The smell of bread and apples drifted through open windows. Children's laughter from nearby farms echoed across the fields. Asterisk, sometimes neighbors would stop by, bringing news or gifts. They all treated Adams with respect, not because he had been president, but because he was still one of them, a man of the land. A farmer again, after a lifetime of history. He never wore the airs of power. His clothes were plain. His hands sometimes dirt-stained from the garden. Asterisk. He often said he preferred the feel of soil to the sound of applause. Asterisk, at the end of the day, he and Abigail would walk together in the orchard, the low sun painting their shadows long and soft across the grass. She would sometimes pluck an apple, polish it on her apron, and hand it to him with a smile that said more than any speech. Asterisk, when night came, The candles glowed in the windows like stars that had come down to rest. Inside, the house hummed with quiet peace. Adams would sit by the fire, reading aloud to Abigail, Milton, Cicero, or passages from Scripture. Sometimes she would pause him and add her own thoughts. And they would talk for hours, their voices rising and falling like gentle waves. Outside, the wind moved through the apple trees, rustling the leaves like a soft applause for their wisdom and devotion. In those moments, history itself seemed to stop. The world beyond the orchard with its wars and politics and noise, felt far away, small and almost unreal. Years passed, and the orchard aged with them. New generations came, and the sound of small feet filled the hallways again. Grandchildren played among the trees, their laughter bright against the soft hum of bees. John Adams grew older, slower, his hair white as the blossoms he loved, but his mind remained sharp, bright as ever. He would sit by the window with his pen, writing reflections that would one day become his final letters filled with gratitude, memory, and the peace of a man who had lived fully. In one of them, he wrote, "Greater than gratitude to God for all the mercies that still remain, for home, for friendship, for the slow march of time that teaches us patience." It was July 4th, 1826. The sky was brilliant and blue. It had been exactly 50 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Adams was 90 years old, resting in his bed, the air thick with summer warmth and the smell of grass from the orchard. The family gathered quietly in the house. The old man's breathing was slow but steady. He opened his eyes once more, looked toward the window, and whispered, "Greater than Thomas Jefferson still lives." What he did not know was that, on that same day, hundreds of miles away, Thomas Jefferson had also passed, within hours of him, two men who had shaped a nation, to friends and rivals. Leaving the world on the same day the country they built celebrated its birth. Outside, the apple trees were heavy with fruit. The breeze moved gently through the leaves, as though carrying his soul into the calm blue sky. Even now, if you walk through Quincy on a quiet afternoon, you can still find the Adams house standing just as it was, strong, simple, peaceful. The floors still creak softly underfoot. The books still fill the rooms with quiet dignity. And in the orchard, the apple trees still bloom each spring, their petals falling like snow upon the grass. It's said that in the hush of evening, you might hear the faint laughter of two voices, John and Abigail, speaking of philosophy, of love, and of the simple beauty of home. Now, close your eyes. Imagine you're walking down that same narrow path through the orchard. The light is warm. The air is sweet with apple blossom. You feel the earth soft beneath your feet. You hear bees, distant children, and the rustle of leaves that sound like whispered blessings. You pass the brick house its windows glowing softly. A candle flickering in the study inside. A man and woman sit side by side, their heads bent together over an open book. You walk past quietly, not wanting to disturb them. You breathe in the scent of apples and ink, and as the sun sets, asterisk, the whole world feels calm, old, wise, and at peace. The day fades, the orchard darkens, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird begins to sing. Let that sound carry you now, through history, through memory, asterisk, into the softest sleep. The Quiet Houses of the Presidents Part 3, Jefferson's Monticello Dreams, asterisk. The night was deep and tender in the rolling hills of Virginia. A soft wind brushed through the tall poplars surrounding Monticello, the grand yet humble home of Thomas Jefferson. The moonlight lay like silver dust upon the lawn, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth and old books. Somewhere in the distance, a whippoorwill sang, and its call echoed across the sloping valley, asterisk. Inside the great dome-topped house, a single candle burned. Its flame wavered gently beside a writing desk piled with papers, ink, and the marks of endless thought. Jefferson sat there, his hair now streaked with age, his eyes still bright with curiosity. Asterisk. He had spent his life chasing knowledge, architecture, music, philosophy, the laws of man and nature. Yet tonight, he seemed still quiet, listening to the rhythm of his own house, the faint ticking of a clock, the whisper of wind through the shutters, the creak of wood that had aged alongside him. Jefferson's Monticello was more than a house. It was a dream made real, a place where art and science touched the soil of Virginia. He had designed it himself, drawn every angle, chosen every view, asterisk. He wanted sunlight in every room, books in every corner, and open windows to let ideas drift in like fresh air. Asterisk. By day, the rooms filled with warmth, the scent of freshly ground coffee, the sound of footsteps on oak floors, the laughter of his grandchildren, asterisk. By night, the house became something else, a sanctuary of reflection, where Jefferson often walked the halls alone, candle in hand, deep in thought. That evening, the candlelight flickered against the shelves of books that lined the study, thousands of volumes in Latin, Greek, and French. Asterisk. He reached for one, its spine worn by time. Marcus Aurelius. Meditations? Asterisk. He smiled faintly. To live according to reason, he whispered, and to leave the world a little better than one found it. Asterisk. He placed the book down and looked to the window. The moon hung over the distant Blue Ridge Mountains, soft and silent. It reminded him of the nights he had spent in Paris, designing this very home in his mind. Back then, Monticello was only a dream. Now it stood before him, a living monument to a restless heart. Down the hallway, a clock chimed softly, midnight. Asterisk. Jefferson rose, wrapped a shawl around his shoulders, and walked to the entrance hall. The floors glowed faintly in the moonlight. Asterisk. He paused before the great doors and opened them slowly. Asterisk. Cool night air flowed in, carrying the scent of pine and rain. The world outside was sleeping, the gardens, the fields, even the old mulberry trees he had planted decades ago. He stepped out onto the portico and gazed across the hills. The stars seemed endless, scattered like seeds across the heavens. Asterisk. He thought of all that had passed the nation he had helped to found, the words he had written that still echoed through time. All men are created equal. He wondered if those words would ever fully come true. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of both pride and regret. Behind him, Monticello's walls held the stories of his life. Asterisk the music room with its violins and harpsichord. Asterisk the parlor with portraits of friends and philosophers. Asterisk the small study with its mechanical gadgets and revolving chair. Inventions of a mind that refused to rest. Asterisk in the corner sat a globe, its oceans faded blue. He turned it slowly, tracing his finger across continents he would never see again. The globe stopped at America, a young country still learning to walk. He smiled softly. "She'll find her way," he murmured, "just as we all must." As he wandered through the house, he stopped before a window that overlooked the vegetable garden. Even in the faint light, he could see the ordered roast peas, lettuces, and herbs he had tended with his own hands. Asterisk gardening had always been his peace. "No occupation is so delightful to me as the culture of the earth," he once wrote. He believed that a man was closest to God when he worked with the soil. Tonight, he imagined the earth breathing quietly beneath the stars. Asterisk he thought of the enslaved workers who had built their unseen hands shaping his dream. Asterisk his heart grew heavy, a silent ache that words could not fix. Asterisk he wished he could rewrite that part of history, but the past lay still, like the sleeping hills beyond. He climbed the narrow stairs to the dome room, the heart of high above the rest. Asterisk few ever visited it. It was a room of solitude, filled with soft echoes and starlight filtering through the oculus above. Asterisk here, Jefferson would sometimes stand for hours, watching the sky turn. He called it his observatory of peace. Tonight, he stood again beneath that circle of night, feeling the quiet hum of time itself. Asterisk he took a deep breath, and for a moment all the noise of the world fell away. No politics, no letters, no burdens. Only the soft pulse of the earth and the steady flame of life. He remembered his days as a young man, sketching designs for Monticello, while listening to the rustle of the James River. Asterisk. He remembered the laughter of his daughter Martha, the scent of apple blossoms in spring, the hum of bees near the garden fence. Asterisk life had been a tapestry of joy and sorrow, knowledge and mystery. He often said that architecture was frozen music. Perhaps Monticello was the song of his life, built from harmony and silence, from stone and spirit alike. As the night deepened, a soft rain began to fall, tapping gently against the dome. Jefferson watched the droplets glisten in the candlelight. He whispered, "How sweet is the stillness of nature when man learns to listen." The candle burned low. He walked back to his study and sat once more. Asterisk he opened a fresh page in his notebook and began to write, not of laws or governments, but of dreams. Asterisk let the generations to come, he wrote slowly, find wisdom not in conquest, but in understanding, not in noise, but in peace. Asterisk he looked up, hearing the rain grow softer. The candle flickered one last time, then went out, leaving the room bathed in moonlight. Asterisk Monticello stood silent, a breathing memory, holding the spirit of a man who believed that ideas could outlive stone. Morning would come soon. The mist would roll down the Virginia hills, and the house would awaken again, filled with birdsong and the scent of dew. Asterisk, but for now. Monticello slept asterisk, and somewhere in that sleep, Jefferson's dream of light, knowledge, and harmony drifted onward through time. Soft instrumental music fades, ... Asterisk, the wind through the trees whispers gently. Monticello still stands, and in every quiet house of history, a dream still breathes. Asterisk, the quiet houses of the presidents. Part 4. Lincoln's lamp in the storm. The wind was restless that night over Washington City. Asterisk. Rain drifted across the windows of the great white mansion. Asterisk, the White House, though in those days, it was still a home built of hope and sorrow. Lit by the glow of candles instead of electricity. Asterisk, inside. The halls were silent. Most of the household had gone to sleep. Only one lamp still burned in the study. A small flame on the president's desk. Asterisk, behind it sat Abraham Lincoln. His tall frame slightly bent, his eyes shadowed by weariness. Asterisk, he rested his hands upon a pile of letters, their ink still wet, the words heavy with grief and duty. Asterisk, outside, thunder rolled across the Potomac. Asterisk, each rumble seemed to echo the distant sounds of war, the marching of soldiers, the cries of the wounded, the endless heartbeat of a nation tearing itself apart. Asterisk, Lincoln lifted his head, staring at the lamp before him. Asterisk, its light trembled slightly, but did not go out. Asterisk, he watched it for a long time, as if its quiet persistence was the very thing keeping him awake. The White House in 1863 was not the grand, glittering palace people imagine today. Asterisk, it was a house of wood and stone that creaked in the wind. A place where floors groaned under the weight of footsteps and time. The rooms smelled faintly of smoke and ink, and the faintest trace of sadness lingered in every corner. Asterisk, in the drawing room hung portraits of past presidents, their eyes fixed forever in oil and dust. Asterisk, but Lincoln often said he felt closer to the servants, the guards, and the soldiers who slept on the lawn than to those painted faces. Asterisk, he was a man of the people, born in a cabin of logs, who now lived in a house of marble. Asterisk, and yet, the weight of that difference never left him. That night, his wife Mary was asleep upstairs. Asterisk, the soft sound of rain filtered through the house, and somewhere in the distance, the clock struck midnight. Lincoln leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. Asterisk, he saw the faces of his sons Robert, the eldest, far away at war, and Willie, the sweet boy who had left this world too soon. Sometimes he still felt the boy's presence in the room, as if the gentle flicker of the lamp was his spirit keeping vigil beside him. He whispered softly, Asterisk, greater than we are all travelers, my dear boy. Some of us just go a little ahead. His voice trembled in the empty room. Asterisk, the desk before him was scattered with letters from mothers, wives, and soldiers. He read them every night, pleas for mercy, words of sorrow, small flickers of faith written in trembling hands. Asterisk, he picked one up now. The paper was worn, stained by tears. Asterisk, greater than Mr. President, it began, I beg you to spare my son. He is only 17. He fled the battle in fear, but his heart is good. Please have mercy. Asterisk, Lincoln folded the letter slowly, his eyes heavy with compassion. Asterisk, he had read hundreds like it. Asterisk. And though he knew he could not save them all, he tried again and again to offer grace wherever he could. He whispered to himself. Asterisk, greater than I, have always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice. Asterisk, the lamp flickered, as if nodding in agreement. In the next room, the fire crackled weakly. Asterisk, he rose, carrying the lamp with him, and stood before the window. Asterisk, rain streaked the glass. Beyond it lay the dark gardens, the Capitol dome faintly visible through mist. How strange, he thought, that the same city which once celebrated victory now echoed with sorrow. He pressed his palm against the window pane. Asterisk, feeling the cool glass under his hand, as though he could touch the world beyond and calm its pain. He remembered his first days here, the crowds, the speeches, the noise of politics. Asterisk, now, all he longed for was quiet. Asterisk, he missed the open fields of Illinois, the scent of soil after rain, the laughter of neighbors on summer nights. He thought of his wife, asleep above him, dreaming perhaps of better days. He thought of his soldiers, soaked in mud somewhere far away, and prayed they might see morning. Lincoln bowed his head and began to pray too, not in words meant for books, but in the quiet language of the heart. He prayed for strength. He prayed for the war to end. He prayed that the lamp in his hand, the lamp of leadership, might keep burning until peace returned. Hours passed. The rain softened. He returned to his desk and opened a small drawer. Inside lay a piece of folded paper, the Emancipation Proclamation. Asterisk, written in his own hand, signed months before. Freeing millions from bondage. He ran his fingers gently over the faded ink. Asterisk. That paper had changed the course of a nation. But it had also aged him years in a single night. He could still hear the sound of crowds cheering in the streets. And yet, he remembered the silence that followed, the realization that freedom was only the first step of a long, uncertain road. Asterisk, he smiled faintly, whispering. Asterisk, greater than we must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country. The words seemed to echo back to him from the very walls. The house listened. The wind answered with a sigh as dawn neared. The storm began to fade. Asterisk, the clouds thinned, revealing the first faint light of morning. Asterisk. Lincoln stood and walked toward the hallway. Asterisk, he paused beneath the great staircase, looking up toward the second floor where his family slept. In that silence, he could almost hear Willie's laughter, the sound of a child running through these same halls. For a moment, the president smiled. Then he whispered, "Greater than perhaps the angels visit us still, even in these troubled times." Asterisk, he turned back toward the study, the lamp still glowing in his hand. The light cast his shadow long across the floorboards, a tall, thin silhouette moving slowly through history. Outside, the first rays of sunlight touched the city. Asterisk, the storm had washed the streets clean. Asterisk, the air smelled of wet stone and lilac. Lincoln walked to the window once more. The Capitol stood in the distance, wrapped in morning mist. Asterisk, he thought of the men rebuilding its dome even as war raged. How that unfinished building had become a symbol of endurance. He whispered to himself, Asterisk, greater than we shall complete it. And this nation too. The words hung in the air like a promise. Asterisk, that evening, as night returned once more. The president's house glowed softly with candlelight. He sat again at his desk, pen in hand, and wrote one final letter for the day, to a grieving mother, who had lost 5 sons in battle. Greater than dear madam, he wrote, I cannot pretend to console you for the loss you have suffered. Yet I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement, and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours. To have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. He set the pen down, closed his eyes, and let the silence surround him. The lamp burned steadily beside him, a small sun, in the darkness. And so the night passed. One man, one light, and a nation learning to heal. When morning came. He would rise, put on his worn black coat, and greet the people again with quiet strength. He would laugh when he could, weep when he must, and walk forward, always forward, until history itself could catch its breath. But tonight, as rain whispered once more against the windows, Abraham Lincoln allowed himself to rest. He placed a hand upon his heart, and the lamp beside him flickered gently, as though to say, greater than you have done enough for now. He smiled faintly, and in that light, humble, steadfast, eternal the house, the storm, and the man all drifted into peace. The storm fades. The lamp still burns, and somewhere in the quiet halls of memory, Abraham Lincoln keeps his lonely vigil, the light that never goes out. The Quiet Houses of the Presidents Part 5. Roosevelt's Fireside Piece *. The night was cool along the banks of the Hudson River. A soft mist drifted over the water. And somewhere beyond the trees, an owl called, slow, steady, like the ticking of a distant clock. At the top of the hill stood a great stone house, its windows glowing faintly with golden light. This was Springwood, the home of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President.